We see young couples in today's society who go in and out of relationships, and we wonder what are the secrets to lasting love. So we sat down with couples in our community that have been together for the majority of their life, and we asked them to give us some lessons in love, music. Love is hard to explain. There's a lot of definitions for love. I mean, you love in different ways. You love your friends, you love your children, you love your parents. But the love you have for a spouse is a different look because it has to be more than love. There has to be a lot more. Love is 100% giving of self and thinking of the other person being able or wanting to do anything that you can possibly do for the other person, and having them do the same for you because you never know what you're going to be called upon to do well for me. It's not walking around with hearts and flowers above my head all day, but for me, it's kind of a lively relationship that has its ups and downs. Love is an action that surrenders itself for the sake of another. I kind of knew that he was the one. It took a while. I have to say I wasn't sure for a while, but the more that I was with him, I realised that he did have the same goals that I had. We both basically wanted to have a home, have a family. We were both working at the time, and we knew that that wasn't going to change. So, and we just felt like, as years went by, that we would attain those goals. He was in a car accident. He was on his way to see me. It was in a serious car accident. And when I realised that, I said to myself, oh my God, I couldn't live without him. And so that's how we knew. And she lived in Upper Manhattan in New York, and I lived on Long Island. And it was about a 40-mile trip, and I made it 7 nights a week, right? And I realised if I'm doing that, there must be more to it than just the trip. I thought I was doing the right thing. We just had it's a mutual connection. It was just a connection, mutual understanding. We met in high school when I was 14. So we've been 14. We've been together since I was 14. Well, I don't really think you know when you're that young. You really don't know when you're that young, but we knew we liked each other. We liked each other, of course. And I think love grows. You just don't love somebody. That love at first sight, I don't think so. I think love grows. And when you're married so young like we were, you either grow up together or you grow apart, and we grew up together. Somebody asked me at work one time, and we were only married 25 years. And it was, man, doesn't it get boring being with the same person for, and at the time, it was only 25 years. And I said, well, a lot of it's how you look at it. And if seeing the same person day after day and doing some of the same things to you is boring to me, I find it comfortable, and comfortable is not bad. I'm not going to have any big surprises next week. And secondly, that we work at making sure things aren't too boring. We took an interest in each other right away. It just, and as our relationship went along, at one point, we just made up our minds. We belong together. We did. We went to school together starting about 5th grade or 6th grade. So we've known each other since then. So when I went to her school, didn't pay any attention to her pretty much, because she was known as a mean girl. And it wasn't really until our sophomore year we played in the band together. And it was about the end of that school year that I started talking to her, and we started talking over the summer. And that's when the relationship started to come together. I was a midwife back home, and I used to deliver babies in the homes. And I delivered his niece, and she took a picture of me with the baby holding the baby. And Paul was in California at that time, and she sent him a picture of me with the baby. And he said to her, who is that? I don't know her. I said, well, that's the midwife who delivered the baby. So then he said, tell her to correspond with me as Pampers. I said, okay. So we started corresponding. This was September of 78. And then at Christmas time, he said, I'm coming to meet you personally, because we just corresponded either by phone or by letter. And he came at Christmas. We liked each other. We started going out. As I said, I was working as a midwife, and I took 2 weeks off from work so that I'd be with him every day from morning till dawn to get to know each other. Good, you have to look for a person who treats you well, who would be a loyal person, who treats their parents well, who treats their siblings well, how they treat other people, respect for themselves first of all, and then respect for others. Of course, you're attracted to each other, and attraction is the first thing that brings you together, but you have to make sure that that person has the same goals that you have in life. If you know someone really well, not meet someone and then marry them 6 months later, for example, know them longer than that, know their family, what their family values are, can make it, the sense of humour, or someone who can make you laugh. Also, they can be a different race, they can be a different gender, they can be a different religion. But if you have the same morals and you have the same goals, you can work it out. Dating in this generation is a lot different. a lot different than when we were first of all. There's the internet and phones, and I mean, every generation has their own thing. I remember when we were dating, I bet we didn't have a telephone. I begged my mother for a phone because it's beautiful. It's a lot different. I mean, the young people today have so much more at their disposal. They have, with all of the social media that's out there, it was a lot tamer when we were dating. I mean, we didn't have a lot of the distractions that are out there today. In some cases, that's good because you can actually do some checking up on the other person. You can make sure that they are, which you think they are. But I think on the other hand, it's a little easier to date when we were younger. Life was simpler. Let me put it that way. Social media is kind of our misnomer, because it's more like anti-social media. You see people sitting together, paying no attention to each other, right? You could probably ask them what the other one is wearing, and they couldn't tell you. And I think, social media has its place, but it has taken over too much. You have to have conversation, you have to have interaction with each other, and conversation and communication, and social media stops that. It just interferes accountability, responsibility. I would not dare go to her home to take her out on a date without first of all contacting her mum, her dad. Okay, in fact, even when I would call her, I had to go through mum or someone there, because basically we didn't have the texting and so forth. And so on today, social media in a way bypasses mum and dad, because you don't need to go through mum and dad to talk to the daughter, to set up a date or whatever the case may be. There's going to be disagreements and arguments in a marriage, but that's not the end of the world. If you want, you have to resolve it. You have to be adult. You both have to be adult enough to sit down and discuss it and not carry a grudge. So you deal with conflict in a marriage by first of all not letting the sun go down upon it the next day. It's gone, don't hold on to it. We have had plenty of arguments through our married life, but they're not the type of arguments you hate each other afterwards. Hate never enters into it. You may say it for a second, but hate never enters into it. It's just part of everyday life. Sometimes you have to walk away from it and come back and readdress the conflict. I think that in a marriage you have to pick your battles. I think some of them are going to be major decisions. Some are minor things that you're not going to agree on. Never go to bed mad at each other. Yes, another person is doing something that bothers you. You want to make sure you mention it to them in a nice way and see if you can't change their ways, or maybe you're doing something wrong. So you got to be open to what you want to do in that situation. After a while, I've learned over the years, don't sweat the small stuff. The most important thing to make in a relationship last, I think, is first of all financial. I think you have to have the same financial goals. And I think that's where a lot of people make their mistake. Well, one thing is that you have to get to know the person, and that comes with time. It is not a short relationship. You have to look at their family as well, because you're marrying into that family, and where they come from is what you're going to get, whatever's in the house that is going to be a part of that person's personality. So you really do have to get to know the person in their family. I think also that you have to realise that you are a team. Once you're married, you are a team. So as children come along, or as mishaps come along, you have to, work it out together. You're always going to have some differences of opinion when you do things, but you have to be able to at least have one common path in the end. Hold on to each other through the storms of life. Get to know each other well. You should know each other well. I feel you should have a little bit of a courtship, a little bit of time to get used to each other first. And it's always we, not I, to be kind, loyal, honest, to talk to each other and talk over, any problem and try to settle it between you. A relationship, especially in a marriage relationship, they used to say it's a 50-50 proposition. Well, that's the reason that 50 of them fail. Because marriage is not a 50-50 proposition. I see that as a 100-100. Each person has to bring 100 of themselves to give to that relationship. That is the only way that it's going to work when young people do enter into a relationship. It's difficult when they're young for them to think, beyond a few years, 5 years, 10 years. Certainly not into the 40 and 50 year range. But you have to think about this person long term. Would you be willing to take on a lot of her extra responsibility if something happened to this person and this person became disabled, or something you had to take on more? Would you be able to do that? Do you agree on having children or not having children? How many children? Things like that. So, you have to my point would be to, for young couples, take it slow and be sure, or as sure as you can be. Sometimes I think young people want to get married because they're thinking of that big wedding and how the party and all the neat stuff about that. I think that's where they make their mistake. We got married in a lawyer's office in another state. She was too young to get married in Illinois. So I think that you have to get past that and think about what the future is going to be and talk about it. Do you want children? Do you not want children? I mean, it is a lot different than when we were back when we were. You always couldn't make that decision. It just happened. But today you can make that decision. I think this is something you need to talk about before you first meet a person. You say, well, I like this. You form in lust. Lust is not what carries through you. Have to meet somebody. Think about what the future is going to hold. Whether you can live together, form a family, and then build a life together. So you have to really look into the future. See the way that person treats their family. See the way they treat people in general and think, well, okay, I can form a relationship with this person. It's not always an easy road, but you keep going, keep on keeping on. You should be sure of that commitment when you make it. Many of the children are abused do not have respect for themselves, so they do not respect themselves. So they have a tendency of not having any commitment to each other. So if someone else comes along, bam, they're over there or they're over here, and that does not work out for any longevity in a relationship. And a relationship is a lot more than just sex. Also, it has to do with caring for another person and thinking about the things that you do that affect the other person too. Here in America, we have a huge divorce rate, and we didn't see that as an option when we got married. We were going to get married and be together. And so that's one reason, I suppose, that the marriage lasted 54 years so far, almost 54, is that we just decided to make it work. People say, well, if you've got a bad background or something they're brought up to. We were both brought up in broken homes. And when we were young, we vowed to each other that this was going to last and we would not ever have our children from a broken home if divorce has to take place. I think the only reason for divorce should be if the apartment is, or the house is burning. You get out, and if it's such a intense hatred and bitterness and fighting, then you, for your own life, you have to get out of that. But otherwise, you can work things out. Life is a challenge for everything. Divorce is necessary if there is abuse in the marriage, if there has to be a substantial reason. I mean, I'm sure people get divorced. I have a divorce in my family. If there is a necessary reason for it, yes, I don't see anything wrong with it. But I think that people need to try and work out their differences. They shouldn't run away from a problem without trying to solve it first. If you want it to work, if you're fully committed to your marriage and your family, it will work out. Children changes your life, okay? And I remember when I got the first child I was working, I couldn't wait to go back home. You know what I mean? But they change your life, and you have to adapt to the children rather than your children adopting you. We find out that children are not products of what they hear, but they're products of what they see. So we had to demonstrate, and that was important, that we were ready to have those children, because it meant that we were able to give more attention to them. It changes the focus of the family unit. Now you've got a little person to take care of. We used to call that, when the kids were little, we'd say, we're going to coffee talk, and that's when we would discuss the kids. We had a motorcycle, and we jumped on the motorcycle and went over to the coffee shop. And that's where we sat and discussed our problems. And love is more an agape kind of relationship, meaning a higher form of love, a meaningful love, a lasting love. There is the erotic kind of love involved in relationship. There's a filiate, which is kind of brotherly, sisterly love, because you're also supposed to get along besides living together. And so it has many forms and has only one word for it, love. Greek at least has Sergei agape philia. And so they can fine-tune it a little bit more. But, when you are in love, because you feel deep down in your heart, that is the right person. You know the way he talks, that he's gentle. How do you know when you're sick? You just know it. You feel it. You feel it when I have something that happened. And I can't wait to tell him that's true. Somebody's got your back no matter what. You have to trust. And that is one of the most important things in a relationship. He trusted me to go out with my friends because we've known each other. And they're just certain rules that he knew that I go by, and I knew that there were certain rules that he goes by. There's a time, and there's a place for everything. You can have time for your friends, and you'll have to make sure that that you have time for your partner when you find someone that you love, or that you care about. You want to be good to them. And I think that sometimes the young people are always looking for something more. There's someone better down the street maybe. So they'll go look for them. And instead of dealing where they are, you have to have separate interests and mutual interests. Because you can each bring to the partnership something special instead of just, you have to have interests separate from each other. You have to trust each other. Trust and respect, that's very important. And to be loyal, not to tell lies. Or, just be loyal and honest and everything will work out by it. To have and to hold, to have an adventure for better, for worse for better, or worse for richer. You may kiss the bride. You